It has never been more clear. So we have a massive Celtics trade update to go over today as it pertains to Jrue Holiday. Some new reports have surfaced. We're going to break down those new reports and discuss what it means going forward as Brad Stevens is brewing something big. Stay tuned for all that in this episode. But before we get into it, if you're a part of the percentage who aren't subscribed to the channel, this is the place to be for daily Celtics content. So make sure to hit that subscribe button. Ladies and gentlemen, the offseason is well underway now. And of course, free agency opens up very soon. The NBA Finals, all these different things. But the question remains the same, and the number one priority for Brad Stevens is, of course, making a move to free up some cap space. And we have some new reports that have dropped specifically regarding Jrue Holiday. And, of course, Kristaps and Jrue Holiday are the two names that are most likely to get traded at this point for the Boston Celtics. And some new reports have dropped. Let's dive right into it right now. You can see this here. An article dropped 23 hours ago from Ryan Stano. Top 5 Jrue Holiday replacements for the Celtics amid the trade rumors. These players can end up being good replacements if the Celtics decide to trade Holiday. And of course, recent reports from Shams, Windhorst, all these guys are basically confirming that one of the two are going to be traded between Jrue Holiday and Kristaps Porziņģis. Potentially even both are going to get traded here. And we're going to go through a few of these players, specifically regarding Jrue Holiday. And I want you guys to let me know down below if you think, A, any of these are worth it, and B, if you think that they should trade Jrue Holiday in general. Because, of course, at this juncture, the Celtics, they're not going to be a better team by trading Jrue Holiday, but it's something that's going to have to be done at some point because of the luxury tax and all these different things, especially with Tatum being out for a lengthy period of time next season. So let's dive into the first one here. You can see this here. If the Celtics are going to trade Holiday, these 5 players could be good replacements, and it names former Celtics guard, as we're all familiar with, Marcus Smart at number 1. And it goes on to say the former Celtics point guard could be on the trade block again this summer after being traded to the Grizzlies to make room for Holiday. Smart was moved to Washington. Smart has continued to be injured much as it was when he was first season in his first stint in Boston. He has played in just 64 games in his last 2 seasons. But of course we all know about Marcus Smart, relatively inexpensive, a very good defender, good facilitator, and I think the trade, it was worth it for the Celtics. And they got a haul back from Marcus Smart. But if they could bring him back in a deal, this could be a very interesting scenario. Now, obviously, is swapping Jrue Holiday for Marcus Smart going to make this team better immediately? No, and that's going to be a similar kind of discussion for most of the trades we're going to be talking about this offseason, because the team, in all likelihood, unless they go all in for a guy like Kevin Durant or Giannis, they're not going to get better from a lot of these trades. They're just going to be retooling it. The goal is to not get, you could get better depending on who you bring in and if you add picks, but a lot of these talks are about shedding salary and things like that. But looking at Marcus Smart here, you can see last season, he put up 9 points, 2 rebounds, 3 assists a game, and of course 1 steal a game. His efficiency was down compared to previous years, but we're all familiar with it. Marcus Smart's not a super efficient, player anyway. He's known for his energy, known for his defense. But, he played with the Grizzlies and then, of course, got shipped off to Washington. It is a very interesting proposition because, of course, he'd be familiar with the system. He'd be familiar with, Brad Stevens, Joe Mazzulla to a degree here. And it would be interesting, though the actual package would, of course, have to be, up in the air. You wouldn't assume that the Celtics are going to, their number one priority, if they're trading Jrue Holiday, would be get back someone who can help them, of course, this upcoming season, but also beyond that into when Jayson Tatum is returning. Because Jayson Tatum is 1A option, the star of this team, but he's also their gateway to being a finals contender, and that's, of course, going to be one of the biggest scenarios. So let me know down below if you think Marcus Smart would be a good fit back on the team in a potential Jrue Holiday trade. Rumors are starting to pick up there, so it's going to be interesting to see who they actually, if they target a guy like Marcus Smart, of course, on the Wizards. If you're the Wizards, maybe you want a veteran in Jrue Holiday, and of course, seeing what picks go either way, because, Jrue Holiday is a much better player than Marcus Smart is, especially with Marcus Smart being injured. And of course, it would be a 3-team deal. You might be able to bring the fan favorite back in the final year of his contract, which would further help him shed salary. And again, this move wouldn't be, unless he re-signs, it would still remain very similar to the other moves we're discussing, where he's a pending UFA or pending, expiring free agent, and then once he expires, they can either bring him back in a cheaper deal to play alongside Tatum, or they let him walk, and that's more salary that is shedded. But let's go into the next one, and this one's a bit of a cop-out kind of. It's Payton Pritchard, and he says the obvious replacement for Jrue Holiday is already on the roster. It is Payton Pritchard. Gotten better defensively, all these different things. I expect a huge leap from Payton Pritchard once again this season. We saw him, be one of the best bench players, one of the best 6 men in the NBA last year, and I think at this point, this upcoming year, he's probably going to get some minutes starting, depending on if they trade Jrue Holiday, and that's why it has a huge domino effect for this team. If they trade Kristaps, if they trade Jrue Holiday, both of which are going to open up spots for a lot of the young players, whether that be Xavier Tillman, Payton Pritchard, all these guys are going to be, obviously Xavier Tillman isn't young, but these guys are going to be able to get better. They're going to be able to get better and play a lot more. And I think Payton Pritchard is probably the most obvious and most clear-cut fit here to get more minutes. But I just want to throw that one in there. But let's go back to a couple of trade options here now. This one is very intriguing as well because this is veteran point guard Mike Conley. The Celtics are looking for players with expiring contracts. Conley could be a good option for just 1 year, another expiring. He's slated to make $10 million, so the Timberwolves have to add another piece to make the numbers work. It's clear Minnesota wants an upgrade at point guard. Getting an inexpensive option for 1 year would be beneficial for the Celtics, and Conley is still a decent offensive player. And this one is interesting as well. Mike Conley, very solid player, has had some down years, had some up years. For, of course, a Jrue Holiday replacement, assuming they make a trade, you would have to do some things to make it work here because he still makes $10.4 million. It's not like Mike Conley is making a very little amount of money. He's still making quite a decent amount of money here, and I'm not exactly sure about this one in particular. Last season, you can see here once again he had worse stats than Smart, but of course they do different things. 8.2 points, 2 rebounds, 8 assists a game, 40% from the field, 41% from 3, which again, the stats are pretty good, but at least efficiency-wise. But again, he's kind of fallen off a little bit compared to previous years. He is a great three-point shooter this year, but we think back to a couple years ago when he was averaging like 14 points and 5 assists a game for the Timberwolves. He would be a good veteran guy, a good veteran option to have. He's approaching 38. He's going to be 38 by the time the season starts. The issue with this one is, again, a lot of this is going to depend on where Brad Stevens wants to go with this team because they have a roster to be okay. They don't have a roster, I don't think, without Jayson Tatum to win the NBA championship or even be super competitive. So if they want to try to shed salary, a lot of these moves make sense. But for being competitive, I'm not exactly sure if bringing in Mike Conley is going to do a whole lot for this team. Not a huge fan of this one. At least with Marcus Smart, if you bring him in, he isn't expiring. Worst case, you just let him walk and you shed the salary. But best case, you could get him back on a team-friendly deal and let him go for future runs with Jayson Tatum and see things there because Smart is still relatively young, whereas Mike Conley is going to be 38, probably going to retire after next year or even this offseason. So I don't love this option as much, and I ultimately don't think it makes a ton of sense there for either side, especially the Boston Celtics. But one quick one before we wrap up here is Damian Lillard, which, I don't think it's going to happen, but you see here, the Celtics are really committed to being better. They could trade both Holiday and Kristaps for Damian Lillard. Damian Lillard tore his Achilles, so it's going to be interesting. He's going to miss most of next year, probably all of next year. Matches what Holiday and Porziņģis would make, so, be easy to do in that regard. Doesn't help them shed salary. I guess the thought process behind Dame would be you trade both of them for Dame, you let him rest this year, and then you have Dame, of course, Tatum, and Jaylen Brown going forward for next year. So the year after next year, this would be a longer-term play. But again, Dame's in his mid-30s, 35, 36 by the time he's healthy. So I don't think this one, a 36-year-old Dame, is going to help Tatum too much. And I think the Celtics would rather keep the salary open rather than taking on one of the worst contracts in the NBA right now, given the injury. So let me know down below what your thoughts are. A lot of reports coming out. We're going to keep you up to date with all the latest Celtics news. So make sure to hit that subscribe button. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys later.